Hi, I'm Mike Turber with 5x5 News, and recently we hooked up with 6 News of Australia to bring you this Carole Baskin interview in its entirety. So please hit that like button, subscribe to our channel, and also visit 6 News of Australia, and you can find that link in the description.
Hey everybody, today I'm joined by star of Tiger King and Dancing with the Stars, Carole Baskin. Carole, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you, Jackson.
Always great to see you. So a lot of people have seen you. You've been very prevalent within the public eye in the last few months. Many people watched Tiger King over the coronavirus crisis, but I have to ask, where did Hey All You Cool Cats and Kittens come from? Everyone seems to love that.
I think that line only showed up like once in Tiger King, so I was so surprised that people latched onto it the way that they did. I've been saying that, I think, since like 2012, I think it was. And I do like a big cat briefing every day of what's happening at the sanctuary. And I've started out that podcast saying that. And so that was something that they were like, well, what do you do every day here? And I said, well, I do this thing and I say this. And so they captured it for Tiger King. And then it became like this phenomenon that was so strange.
Yeah, absolutely. I have heard it everywhere since then. A lot of people say that you were misrepresented in the docuseries, and I believe you agree with that. So talk a little bit about how you were misrepresented.
We worked with them for 5 years, the producers of Tiger King, because they said they were working on what would become the Blackfish for big cats. Are you familiar with Blackfish?
I'm not.
So Blackfish was a movie that came out a few years ago about orcas in captivity. And what happened after that is people realized how cruel it was for us to be keeping orcas and dolphins in captivity. And it forced SeaWorld to stop bringing in orcas from the wild, stop breeding them for life in prison. And it almost ruined SeaWorld because people were like, I don't want to pay to go see that. That's abuse. And so when we were told 5 years ago that this project, which was then called Stolen Wildlife, was going to be something that would show all of the abuse that these big cats suffer, then we were like, absolutely, this is what we need. We need to stop breeding these cats for life in prison. And so for 5 years, every time they asked to come out, we'd drop everything. We'd spend days with their film crews, educating them about the issues. And then when Tiger King came out, it was like the week before Netflix was teasing this show. And it was like some kind of feud with Joe Exotic and Carole Baskin. And so we contacted the producers and we were like, that's not the show that we were working on with you, was it? No response. Tried again as it got a little bit closer. We're like, this just can't be what we worked on with you because this was not what we agreed on. Still said nothing. And so my husband and I just sat there and we watched the whole thing. We binge watched it like probably everybody else did because we were all in quarantine. And at the end of it, we were just gobsmacked. We couldn't believe the freak show that they had produced instead of the project that we thought we were working on.
Yeah, I certainly, think that a lot of people agree that it was a misrepresentation. Certainly people who were a part of your organization. Specifically, the show focused on Joe Exotic, but not only Joe Exotic, but your ex-husband or your former husband, and they kind of tried to tie you in with that somehow. And now you have all these people who've watched this series. They believe that you've murdered your husband and fed him to the tigers. What do you say to all those people who believe that you actually fed your husband to the tigers?
If they were trying to make a show about a feud between two people, they couldn't have picked two worse people because even though Joe used my name all the time and cursed me all the time, I never said anything bad about him. I would talk about the issues. I'd talk about why cub handling was wrong and why these animals didn't belong in cages, but I wouldn't say anything hateful or nasty about him. And even though the producers were trying to get me to say stuff like that, I wouldn't do it. So I think they were kind of with this dilemma of, okay, well, we've got this one guy that's doing all this stuff and we got half the feud, but we don't have the other half of the feud. So how do we create a narrative that excuses his bad behavior, that excuses him for treating animals badly and killing tigers and hiring hitmen? Well, we'll just paint her to be like this Karen. And of course, everybody hates Karen, that privileged white female that is out there calling people out for what they do wrong. And so I think that that was their entire ploy, was to try and use all of the animal abusers who have said these kinds of lies about me forever. And I feel like they roped in my late husband's daughters in a way that they probably had no idea how they were being used in this. And so even though, they've said some really hateful things about me, I know that they know better. And, as far as the animal abusers, of course, they know better, because if you think about it, there's no way they can justify the abuse that they inflict on animals. So they have to change the conversation and deflect to something else. And so they have used the tragedy that befell our families back in the 90s of my husband walking out one day and never coming back as a way of casting dispersion upon me and try to villainize the messenger so that nobody would hear the message. So I feel bad that Tiger King gave all of those people that are so cruel to animals this megaphone for their lies. But the good news is that there has been a lot of media attention afterwards, and it gives me the opportunity to get the real message out there, which is that these cats don't belong in cages.
Whenever we get towards the end, I want to talk again about all the publicity surrounding this. But what do you say to people who think that Big Cat Rescue is just like Joe Exotic's zoo that he has?
That was a big thing that they tried to paint in Tiger King. And what you'll see is, despite the fact that our cages are so much larger and so much more full of things for the cats to do than these backyard breeders, the only images that you see in Tiger King are the little feeding boxes. And people think that our cats live in those feeding boxes because that's all they saw in Tiger King. And so they also did things like let the people who are abusing big cats constantly reinforce each other by saying, she's no better than us. She's just a zoo. She's just like us. And by having each one of them backing up their own claims and not reaching out to anybody who's actually been here or seen the facility or the accrediting bodies that deal with accredited sanctuaries or any of that sort of thing, they created this narrative of zoos and sanctuaries as being equal. And at a philosophical level, we couldn't be any more different. Zoos are in the business of buying and breeding and selling and exhibiting animals. Sanctuaries are in the business of cleaning up the mess that is left behind by people that do all of those horrible things. We don't buy or breed or sell. We don't allow public contact with the cats. Some sanctuaries are open to the public. Some sanctuaries choose not to be. In our case, we felt like it was important to bring people out for these. We would give a tour where there'd be 20 people on a tour. 2 people of our people would go with them. And for an hour and a half, we would talk about the issues and why we needed people to support our federal bill, which would ban cup handling and phase out private possession. And then at the end of the tour, we would help those people actually call their member of Congress to do that. And so we felt like it was a great way of educating people and getting our bill passed. Some sanctuaries just don't want to deal with the public, and I can appreciate why they don't want to do that. But to have portrayed sanctuaries and zoos as being equivalent was just, it was such a devastating blow to all of the good sanctuaries out there that are doing such great work.
Yeah, certainly. I think a lot of people agree with you on that statement. You may have seen some reporters, they are mentioning Joe Exotic to President Trump, and Trump said he would look into potentially giving a pardon. What's your reaction to that?
I can't believe that any political candidate would benefit by setting somebody free who had hired not only one hitman, but 2 hitmen, and the second one was an undercover FBI agent. I mean, how stupid would that look? And somebody who walked up to 5 perfectly healthy tigers and shot them in the head. Animal Planet did a poll a few years ago on what the world's favorite animal is, and it's tigers. So is that going to be good for anybody's campaign to turn that kind of a person loose?
Probably not. You were on Dancing with the Stars. You've done a great job. I watched. I'm sure millions of other Americans did too. What was your goal in going on Dancing with the Stars? Was it to raise some more money to help the cats and tigers?
Well, that did help because COVID-19 and Tiger King hit us within a week of each other. And by having to close our gates to these tours that I was telling you about, that's a third of our income. We have to raise $3.5 million a year to take care of our cats. And so without a third of that, $1 million of that, I've got to find other ways of raising money. So this was a way that I could raise some money for the cats. But the main thing was the people at Dancing with the Stars, they talked to me for like 2 months before I actually agreed to go on the show. And what they had agreed to do was to let me use that as a platform to get the message out that we need to get this federal bill passed to end the cub petting and to phase out private possession. And they really did their job. I mean, they let me do it on their show. They arranged for all kinds of press while I was there. And even though I'm not on the show anymore, they're still sending me press to talk about these issues. So they really went above and beyond to help the cats. And I just love them there for that. And they made the right decision in scratching me from the lineup. I was the worst dancer on the show after Charles Oakley. I think I would have been this much better than Charles Oakley, but not by much. So they made the right decision. But I was really hoping I could improve enough to stay in there so that I could keep the message in front of the public.
Certainly, and getting the message in front of the public was huge. You spoke earlier about the family of Don Lewis. I noticed that they ran a commercial about his disappearance during your episode on Dancing with the Stars. Do you think that was a publicity stunt?
I do. I mean, it was just the timing was, they did the two things that they did to me most recently. They did both on the night right before I was going out there onto the floor to dance. And I think that they were poising that to try and make the most out of the fact that I was getting any kind of attention. They wanted to divert it to themselves. But the good news is, if anybody does come forward with the tip about Don, it's going to clear my name. So it was all good in my estimation.
So no money wasted. Maybe it will actually help solve the case, right?
Yeah.
Hopefully so. Out of all of this media attention, you are a legend. I mean, you're worldwide known. You are Carole. Everybody talks about Carole. There's good and bad, of course. But what's your big takeaway from all of this media attention? What have you learned?
I had been in the media more than 2,000 times before Tiger King came out. And what I knew about the media is that I could count on one hand and have fingers left over the number of times the press actually gets a story right. Even when you write it for them, they will change something in it and get it wrong. So it's like, I know they can't get anything right. But I never anticipated the press being as vicious as they have been since Tiger King. There are so many things that if they did any research whatsoever, if they even looked at the documents that I sent them, they would know that so many of the things that they are repeating or letting the people that hate me say, they would know that those things are lies and they wouldn't be able to post them. But they continue to post them because that sells ads. People want to hate me, and as long as they can keep that hateful vitriol going on, then people will keep coming and reading more about it. So it's been a huge disillusion in the way that the press handles things. And, I got to tell you right now, you are so freaking persistent. Nobody else has hounded me as much as you have. And I really appreciate that kind of persistence. And I really hope that you and your generation will look at the way media is being so dishonest and say, enough of that. We need to tell the news the way it is, the way it really is, get to the bottom, get to the truth of things, and then let people make up their own minds. And so
Certainly.
That's what I was hoping with you.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that my goal in going into the journalism world is to spread real news, not fake news. And that's why I wanted to give you this opportunity to kind of set the record straight. So I really appreciate that. What do you say to everybody out there, just as like a final message? People think all these things about you, some good, some bad. I mean, what do you tell everyone watching out there?
Well, there's two things people can do if they even care about what the truth is. I set up a webpage at bigcatrescue.org/Netflix, and it actually goes through minute by minute of the program saying, this is what they said, but here's what was true, and here's the evidence to back up what I'm saying. So people can go there, and that's what I've given the press that they haven't cared about. And the other thing is, some people have said that I know more, so many people have said that I know more about my husband's disappearance than I really do. And so I put my entire diary out there. If you go to savethecats.org, that's a pointer that'll point actually to my YouTube diary. And I've released everything I ever wrote about it that happened at the time to show everybody this is what I know about it. And if you can figure out anything more from that, then please get back to me. But those two things, if I could get that message out to people, I think that would be the most important things I could say.
Certainly. Well, Carole, I know you are so busy, so thank you so much for taking the time today.
Thank you.